Hello, gamers! Let's talk about that Nintendo Switch 2, ladies and gentlemen. Now, before we start off with ladies and gentlemen, obviously, I know some of you might be like, wow, are you being negative towards, like, a game, Muda? Come on, where's the positivity? So I want to just straight up say that, obviously, I'm not going to be negative here for, controversy's sake. I actually do have some problems with the Nintendo Switch 2 reveal, and a lot of it is with game preservation in the future, which, as you all know, is very important to me. But let's get that positivity out of the way, okay? Let's talk about the good stuff first. So the Nintendo Switch 2 is obviously the successor to the Nintendo Switch 1, which, for me, honestly, like, before I got the Steam Deck, was probably my most played system. Finished a lot of JRPGs on this bad boy, and honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that it was portable and I could take it anywhere with me, I probably wouldn't have been gaming on this as hard as I've done. Sure, the graphics aren't as good as my PlayStation or my PC, but you bet if I could just play Cyberpunk 2077 on my couch with this or take it with me on a plane, I'd probably play it with less impressive visuals any time of the day. Okay, anyways, all that aside, the Switch 2, and it recently got, revealed today, features, again, a 7.9-inch screen, 1080p resolution, so substantially sharper than the Switch, 120 hertz display, meaning that the games will look twice as smooth if they use 120 frames versus the traditional 60. And HDR compatibility, meaning that if you're looking at the colors on an OLED display, if you've ever used a Steam Deck OLED, you'll notice that colors definitely look better when you're using a better screen with HDR functionality. So, of course, all of that stuff is great, okay? The Joy-Cons apparently have, mouse mode attached to it too, so I could totally imagine games like fucking Mario Paint coming out at some point. And, of course, beyond all of it too, you've also got 4K resolution when you dock the thing. Now, I don't think there's going to be many games that are running at 4K, but I could imagine with NVIDIA's DLSS sauce, it could absolutely be a possibility. Okay, so beyond all of this, ladies and gentlemen, what is the price tag for a Nintendo Switch 2? Well, it comes out June 5th for $450 US. So definitely not a super cheap product, but I would say if, you're getting your consoles every, so often as they release, probably not a bad investment. That said, you have to pick between this and I believe a PlayStation 5. So really pick and choose. How important is portability to you versus playing on the most recent system with the most demanding games like Grand Theft Auto 6 coming out later this year. So again, it's up to you. So ladies and gentlemen, the games that are launching include Mario Kart World, which is going to be awesome. I like Mario Kart. It's got Donkey Kong Bonanza, which is a 3D platformer, again. And you've got Kirby Air Riders, I believe a sequel to Kirby Air Ride back in the day. Don't look at the item bounce theme. That comment section is a toxic nightmare. Hyrule Warriors is out here. You've got the Duskblood. So if you are a From Software fan, you've actually got a From Software game coming out. And it looks as close to Bloodborne as we're about to get. Maybe a Bloodborne sequel, all in name. But of course, all of it is basically brought on with some controversy. It's not all, sunshine and rainbows in the Mushroom Kingdom, ladies and gentlemen. For one of the controversies that came out was the fact that there's upgrade packs. So a lot of these games, like Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, you can play a Switch 2 version of them via the upgrade pack method. Now, this isn't new. If you remember back when the PS4 launched, there were a lot of games where you could put your PS3 disc into the PS4, you could spend $10 USD and get an upgraded PS4 version, right? And this isn't new. We've seen this, I believe, even with the PlayStation 5 launch, right? There are certain games, like I believe it was Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, that made you pay for an upgrade, but I consider all of this to be bullshit, okay? There are companies like Microsoft, and you don't see me praising Microsoft all that much, but when you got companies like Microsoft who are releasing versions of their games, like, Halo, Forza, and they're giving you Xbox One base versions alongside Series X versions, all for free, as part of the same package. I don't know why Nintendo can't do the same, right? Even for older games that weren't Xbox Series X launches, Microsoft went back in and made those games run with relevantly better features, right? Like upgrading the resolution somewhat, upgrading the frame rate, putting in higher resolution video assets. So again, if Microsoft is able to provide this for not just their own library, but also third-party companies, I don't know why Nintendo needs the extra $10, especially when this is literally what any company can do. This is anti-consumer, and I wish that, Nintendo and Sony followed Microsoft leads, okay? Or the leads of even PC communities where you can just crank a game up as max as you can. So that was one of the controversies. The other controversy that, again, really rings in my head is the fact that this is a game system where the actual instruction manual, the Welcome Tour app, the primer app, is a paid-for app, apparently. So the Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, which is coming out same day as the system, it's literally a demo tool, right, to showcase what the new functionalities of the game are. That is apparently a paid-for experience. Charging for this is fucking insane. Like, imagine if Sony charged you for the Astro Playroom game that comes with, like, every PlayStation 5, that shows you the functionalities and the boons of the PS5. Imagine if Valve charged you for the Aperture Labs demo that released on the actual Steam Deck, which would just show you, what you can and cannot do with the Steam Deck versus other devices. This is what Nintendo's trying to do. They could have packed this in as a free experience. Instead, they're charging you for what is effectively a shiny instruction manual for their fucking new console, okay? This is not okay. This is definitely anti-consumer, and it's worth completely calling out. Now, of course, the last thing, and I'm sure a lot of you guys who've been watching me have probably wanted to know my take on this, if you know about my love for physical media, Nintendo Switch 2 Game Keycard. Now, for anybody that doesn't know this, okay, this is a copy of L.A. Noire. Now, on the surface, you might be like, what's so special about L.A. Noire on the Nintendo Switch? Well, if I showed you the top of this box, you'll notice it has a giant strip on top that says Internet Download Required. So when you buy this game, you're basically getting a demo on a cartridge, right? Which doesn't really fucking mean much. At the end of all this, you are basically getting a gimped product when, you're basically just buying e-waste. You could have bought this game digitally and not have to worry about a gimped physical release. So a lot of games, unfortunately, on the Switch's library kind of do this. Well, there are some good exceptions, right? Like, for every shit developer you'll find sometimes, there's physical copies like Witcher 3, which have the entire Witcher 3 experience and its DLC on one cartridge. I've actually played this version. It's a very, very good... It doesn't look as pretty as the PC, but it's a fucking good portable version of the game. Great physical copy to own. This is a problem with Switch games, right? It's not just a problem with Switch. We've kind of seen this with some games on the PlayStation, especially games on the Xbox, where the physical discs don't contain the full game. And whether that's because the company cheaps out, they don't want to add in another disc, they don't want to increase a little bit of that, they don't want to increase a little bit of the actual packaging costs, it can mean that you and I get a GIMP product. Now, for most systems, and I've made several videos on this, debunking this myth, most games that launch these days come with a version 1.0 on a disc. You can play this all the way from the start screen to the credits, and you can have your whole game on a disc. Granted, it's better to patch your game and get all the expansions, and nobody's denying that, but you get to own a physical copy, a full version of the game on a disc that you can share with your friends. You can play in its entirety without downloading a patch or needing a DRM effectively to unlock it. So this is a huge problem to the point where games like Metal Gear Solid Master Collection. Now, I would have bought this collection on the Switch because why would I choose to not take it anywhere I go? I mean, I've played Metal Gear Solid 3 countless times on a PlayStation Vita. It's a great way to play the game, and I would love to play it on my Switch. Unfortunately, the physical copy of this game, if you go to Konami's website, you can go all the way to the bottom. This is a physical version for the Switch that literally requires you to download 19.8 gigabytes of information. So effectively, what you're doing is you're just fucking downloading Metal Gear Solid 1, Metal Gear Solid 2, and Metal Gear Solid 3 off of the actual internet. What's front-loaded onto the fucking cartridge, ladies and gentlemen, is just 2 gigabytes, it seems. The actual game doesn't include any of the content. So you're basically fucking buying a game physically that doesn't even have the game on it. It's just a fucking license key, like literally a license key. It's an actual piece of e-waste. The company shouldn't have wasted time and money packaging it. But again, because of the Nintendo Switch, because cartridges do cost money, and I do definitely agree with that, it has allowed a lot of these developers to cheap out on the storage capacity they distribute and just require people to download the remainder of the game. Now, Nintendo doesn't necessarily do this for their IPs that are like, first-party stuff. In fact, a lot of games sometimes don't do it. There's respectable developers that release the whole game on a cartridge, and especially in the Switch's case, you don't even have to install a cartridge, it just works out of the box. Those are cool developers. But what Nintendo has kind of introduced here is what we are calling the game card system. Now, I wouldn't say that this is a new introduction. It's happened in the past. I've proven just now how it happens. But the Switch game key card is legitimizing a shitty form of DRM. So according to Nintendo's site, game key cards are different than regular game cards because they don't contain the full game data. And of course, at the bottom of every Switch 2 packaging will be this little strip that says it's a game key card. So it's a little like Surgeon General like fucking warning that tells you the game you're buying, well, it's not, the game's not even out there. So once you download the game, you can insert the game by inserting the key card into your system and start it up like a traditional game card. So basically, you're buying a digital copy of a game with all of the restrictions of a physical copy. And some people will say, but Muda, I can share this with friends. You can, but let me remind you, game sharing back in the 360 PlayStation 3 days were a thing. And this wasn't entirely new. And before anybody asks, yes, I love physical media. Let me show you just probably maybe like an eighth of my Switch game collection. All these games that I've bought are physical copies that can be played without an internet connection. So games like Metroid Prime Remastered, beautiful game. Games like, wait, actually, let me put it up better on screen right here. Games like, obviously, The Witcher 3, Xenoblade Chronicles X, great title. Games like Diablo 3, games like No Man's Sky, which, again, a recently updated version on my actual Switch, recently like a year old at this point. Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne, great game. Metroid Dread, absolutely brilliant game. And of course, I think you get it. I think you understand that, you know, for me, supporting games, good games is very important. And obviously having a physical copy with the whole game on it is important. There's a lot of games that don't release complete physical copies, like Cyberpunk 2077 was going to buy that on PlayStation 5. The actual physical copy didn't even have the DLC for PS5. What's the point of buying it, right? Surprisingly, the Xbox version actually had the content there. And so speaking of Cyberpunk 2077, it apparently, from CD Projekt Red, they're actually going to be releasing Cyberpunk 2077 launch day for the Switch 2. Now, if I buy the Switch 2, I'm excited for this. And of course, what's interesting right over here is, according to the Switch, according to the actual detailing here, it'll include all of the expansions, basically one of them. It'll take full advantage of Nintendo Switch 2, and of course, it will also come on a physical 64GB game card, which I assume the game is going to fit onto it because it's not a 4K game. I think the game's like 85 gigs on PC, but downscaling that to a Switch, cutting some of the resolution down, the asset quality, because obviously it's not a 4K system, will be something where I think they'll be able to fit it onto a cartridge. Again, this game key system isn't for every game, but it is something worth worrying about. Because again, anytime you deal with physical media, and I'm always going to say it, but like, you don't need to listen to me. There's also like Ross from Accursed Farms, who's made videos, an entire movement called Stop Killing Games, where to really sum it up, a lot of problems with modern gaming is ownership. It's physical preservation. When it comes to movies, when it comes to music, like if you buy a movie on Blu-ray, right? Like, let's say you buy John Wick 3, and you can fucking back it up to your computer. You can have a file stored onto a drive. You can maybe even share, not saying that I would, because, you know, fucking goddamn big movie's going to slit my throat if I promote that. But you can preserve physical media. You can preserve movies and music to an extent. And that, in my opinion, you know, things like piracy, things like preservation, the positive that it provides in that context is that we have not lost a substantial amount of music and movies because it's preserved, because we can back it up and we can store it for eons, you know, to come. But video games are different, especially retro video games that are dying at an alarming rate. So when you have games that have DRM like this, where an internet connection is required, I have to ask the question, what happens when a server goes offline? This is one of my favorite games, Metal Gear Solid 2. If this released in the modern gaming sphere, right? A great game. Imagine if Konami was like, you need an internet connection to connect once and you can play the game. Well, when that server goes offline after 20 years, 25 years, which they tend to do, this game will not be playable unless it's been patched or remastered, and generally companies aren't legally even beholden to it. So the issue that I have is when you release physical media, which Typically, physical media like this, you can back it up and you can play on emulators, and it's a preserved version you can run in an actual PlayStation 2, which I still have right here. This is the only way to preserve the games. And if you start injecting tons of DRM, tons of tools into it, then it really is the industry making the preservation of some of our favorite games more difficult. There's a lot of great games that have come out just this year. And unfortunately, with DRM and a lot of shitty practices, if those games aren't cracked or if there's not a proper non-DRM version of it, we may lose certain games forever. And I don't know how I can convince the audience to really think deeply about it other than just reminding you just like I have now. And, you know, the thing is, people will be like, who uses physical? Just get digital media. And I would be all down for digital. In fact, there's great storefronts, not Steam. It's GOG. I can download a game like Cyberpunk 2077 and, you know, install it without any need for GOG's launcher. I can play it without even firing up a launcher. I can run it like a standard program. I can even share that game with my brother, my significant other, my friends. And they can play it without any need for DRM launchers or any form of online connectivity. And if that was what digital media was all about, would be 100% for it. But we don't live in that world. And it seems like gaming companies want to take us away from that world. Now, obviously, the prices on these games have also increased as well, too. If you haven't been noticing, the price for some of these games has jumped $10. For instance, Mario Kart World right now, ladies and gentlemen, you can buy digital for 79 or 80 euros, which is basically the new price. Now, if you want to get the physical version, that's 90 euros, and that's pretty goddamn expensive. Now, obviously, the physical version is going to be more expensive because you're dealing with physical game carts with higher capacities and higher read speeds, which do cost more. I totally understand that. But digitally, this game is increasing $10 more than... We're at a point where game prices have jumped, and it didn't take GTA 6 to do it. This will become the new normal alongside the PlayStation, alongside the Xbox, alongside effectively every other gaming place out there. Because once it becomes normalized in one storefront, this is the one thing that every game company likes to copy each other on, upping their prices. So this is the new generation coming in, and as much as I like the Nintendo Switch 2, I can't deny it. The more expensive games, the wackier DRM that's constantly being normalized, a lot of these things take away from the hype that I have for this system. And if this is the future of Nintendo and then Sony and then Microsoft to an extent, I think I might just stick entirely to the PC. And as far as my console gaming goes, I think the Steam Deck is where I'm going to be at. Because if we're living in a digital future where physical media is getting gimped day by day, then I might as well stick with the platform that is at least the most open. And it certainly isn't Nintendo, and it certainly isn't Sony, and it sure as fuck isn't Microsoft. But yeah, I wanted to kind of talk about it because I had a lot to say. I hope I got it out. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am out.